Hi, everybody. David Allen here. I'm here with now a good friend, one of our master trainers. Actually, he's our guy and our partner in Italy, who's managing our GTD franchise and partnership there and training trainers. But one of the reasons that it's fun, and I'm delighted, Luca, to have you with us, is that Luca's expertise has a lot of years of experience and miles on his tires working with project management, project managers, certifying them, et cetera. So I won't get it wrong. I'll let you tell the folks, give them a sense of who you are and what you have been doing and what you are doing now, a little bit of your history in terms of how you got there. So give us your name, give us your location, anything else you want to share with us, Luca. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. My name is Luca Gambetti, and I'm talking to you now from my home near Rome, but we are working in Italy, in Rome and Milan, our base locations for training there. And we work also in other cities of Italy. Now I'm running training business that is called Equality Italia. And we started this business, it's 12 years now. We started in 2006, mainly training project managers in American disciplines like the Project Management Institute standards and UK disciplines like the Prince2. And in recent years, we introduced also trainings in agile methods like Scrum, like Lean, like Kanban, and whatever. Since 2 years, as David said, we are working as franchisees of the David Allen Company in Italy. And we are now starting doing trainings in GTD, Mastering Workflow Level 1 and Level 2. My experience before being a trainer, I was a former project manager and a manager in the IT industry. And so, David, these days I'm training several companies in both project management and GTD. So people often ask me questions about that. And the question I'm posing to you now is very recent. Actually, it's a question that emerged on Friday on my last level 2 training I had in a classroom. Project manager managing several projects in Italy. And he's an avid GTD practitioner. I mean, he read all he can find on the internet and on bookstores on GTD. So these guys come to me and say, okay, I've read Making It All Work. In Making It All Work, David Allen says, as the example of a Gracie Garden. And in the Gracie Garden example, we see clearly that we have a person who is managing a venture using all the 6 horizons just on this project. But I have a lot of projects. I have not only Gracie Garden. What I'm supposed to do, I am supposed to have a vision, a purpose, goals for any one of my projects. How can I possibly keep it all together? I tried to do this, and this was a mess, and it's a lot complicated. I surrendered. This is the question I had from my participant. I would like, David, to know your opinion about that. How we can use the horizons if we are working to several projects altogether?
Well, now if you're asking me, my answer to that is pretty simple. You only need to do as much of that delineation of the various horizons as you need to get the project off your mind and to feel like it's on course. Ultimately, all the stuff comes down to next actions, and that's where I'll turn it back to you. It's like, well, what would you do if you were this guy? How would you then manage all of that? So I think every project has its own vertical thinking process that you can go down. What's the purpose? Brainstorm it, organize it, and get next actions on the moving parts. But then at some point, you have to take all the next actions of the moving parts on all of your projects and put those together in some sort of a gestalt so that you make sure you're moving on the right next actions on the right projects. So the guy probably just hadn't taken it far enough. But I'd be curious to know how you answered that and if you were in the process of coaching somebody who had multiple projects.
Yes, really, I answered that the guys should be clear what are their objectives and what are the objectives of the company he was working for. So probably he did a little bit of confusion between the vision of the company he was working for and his personal vision. So I tried to clarify with him these, and it seemed to work. So now at the end of the training, he had some clear goals for every one of the project he is managing now. And he clarified also his personal upper levels and vision and purpose. So we had a very good experience at Natural Planning Model together. So I think we managed to clarify the situation.
Well, all of these models, as I'm sure is probably true with Agile and Scrum and Six Sigma and all of that, all of these models produce a structure to help focus, but the reality is always messier than the model is itself. There are always more subtleties and more things that are ambiguous, than necessarily fit tightly and neatly inside of all of these models. So ultimately, from my experience, you have to kind of get it all as best you can out of your head. Use the model as you need to, as you obviously did with your client, to help have a fertile conversation and stir up the things that need to be talked about, that need to be clarified, that need to be expressed, and then let the dust settle and say, okay, next actions. Because as you know, it's all about how do I appropriately engage with this project? How do I appropriately engage with my job? How do I appropriately engage with any of that? But let me turn it back to you, Luca, because truly over all these years, people have often asked, how does GTD interface with project management? And over all these years, because I was so curious about, who had come up with really good project management models, I kept asking my corporate clients, okay, well, do you have really good project management training? And they go, no. Nobody had actually come up with anything that they really trusted. Some large corporations had come up with their own proprietary templates or their own proprietary models about the project, how they approach their own projects. But that's when they had very big projects that all were quite similar. So they could build a model about how do we best, optimize how we engage with this. But how would you answer to people now who just may come out of the blue and say, hey, Luca, you're doing GTD, but you're also doing project management. What's the difference? What's the same? How do they support each other?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I think that some fundamental thinking in GTD and in project management model are pretty much the same. I will give you a couple of examples I noted down while I'm brainstorming today for our conversation. I noted down a phrase that I found out in one of the models, one of the book I'm teaching. And they say, okay, guys, you should do only enough design upfront you need to safely start working. The traditional project management methodologies say us do all the design you need. The more modern project management methodologies say, hey guys, do only enough design upfront you need. And this thing of enough design upfront reminds me your words. Just do enough planning you need to keep something out of your mind. So I think that GTD and project management are similar in new approaches, in the new, more agile methodologies, while they differ in oldest and more traditional methodologies. Older and more traditional methodologies give a lot of structure, maybe too much structure, and too much structure is only useful in very stable context and very big context. So when everything is known at the beginning, if we are moving in unexplored projects, that is the usual case nowadays, we should move to something that is simpler. It seemed to me that GTD could really help a project manager to do that. I will give you another example. in both the major methodologies of project management that we teach, that is the American one and the UK one, let's say PMI and Prince2, at a certain point during the planning process, they say to the project manager, hey guys, now you should start mind mapping. And it seemed to me that instead of saying you should start mind mapping, they should be saying you should start natural planning modeling. What do you think? Mind mapping is only a tool, but they, writing the model, feel the need for the project manager to clarify what they are thinking. But they simply say, okay, let's use a mind map. What do you think about that?
Well, mind mapping it's a stage of how to feel comfortable about how you've organized your thinking, but it's not the first thing to do. You need to be clear about the purpose. You need to be clear about the desired outcome. And if everybody agrees on that, then you want to open it up for all the potentially relevant things that might be pertinent, and open it up to that. If it's approached in that way, that's how you think anyway. So the natural planning model I called it that because that's how we actually plan to begin with. You actually go through an outcome and a vision and then trying to figure out all the potentially relevant parts, and then you organize those relevant parts once you see that, and then you have a next action. So, it would seem to me that if any of the project management models incorporated that point of view or that process, that kind of doesn't matter when. But if you're trying to mind map something, but you haven't got alignment or clarity about desired outcome or what success would look like, then brainstorming, you'll still want to shoot each other in terms of what the content really should be, because you can only evaluate that content and you can only organize the results of the mind map if you have a clear outcome and also all of that leads to what I've also seen from a lot of project management is that they don't necessarily tackle the individual accountability to come up with next actions and who's accountable for which part. You've got a lot more experience than I do in that regard. So tell me, do those models go all the way down to the action level in terms of what to do? Or is that sort of the GTD add-on, that makes a big difference?
I must again make a difference between the traditional project management and the new project management approaches, the more agile. In the old project management approaches, we have a certain point in which the methodology says, okay, this is a block of work, this is a so-called work package, and someone outside of the project must take care of this work package. And the work package is usually pretty big, so we suppose there is someone outside the project that must divide the work package into individual next actions. So in the traditional project management, this is not approached. It's something too low level. But what is interesting that is in the newest methodologies and approaches, the agile ones, we try to manage also the individual level of practical next action. In the new management methodologies, project management methodologies, we have short span of time called the sprints or time box or whatever. Each one of that has a specific goal. And we have a person that usually is called the product owner, the business ambassador, or whatever, who is in charge to define a goal for the sprint. So all the people involved has a short-term vision of what should happen. And I think that this could be the first step of the natural planning model. We can instruct our agile team to do together a purpose and vision in order to share the accountability for the goal and to better understand what the next action could be. What do you think about that?
I think so, sure. It just becomes a common vocabulary, a common way to approach something, because you come up with different answers when you ask those different questions. What's the reason we're doing this? A lot of project teams are going after some sort of an outcome, but whoever tasked them to do that may have a whole different thing in their mind about what the purpose of that was. So it's always, never hurts to clarify, excuse me, why are we doing this? And what would wild success look like? Those are always rich conversations to have, and at least to check in to see if everybody's, as we say, singing off the same song sheet. So you're saying, though, that the newer models have some of this sort of outcome and action thinking, on a more immediate level kind of built into the models, right?
Right. We have time boxes or sprints of a month, and we have a guy coming from the business that is called the product owner. The product owner says to the team, hey, my vision for next month is that we should arrive to this goal. And altogether, the team divide this goal in objectives, in outcomes that are smaller. These smaller outcomes are usually called the user stories. What is a user story? A user story is basically a story of a people reaching a small objective in a short amount of time. That could be I, as a cashier in a bank, I would like to work smoothly at the end of this month using the product you are producing. And then the members of the team reflect on how to reach this objective. And it seems to me really similar to the natural planning model, or in other terms, we can try to teach them along with the method, the natural planning model as a practical tool to start with the sprint of the goal and to come out with practical next actions. And we are trying to do this at the University of Bologna, where we teach them in the past years agile approaches, and now we are starting teaching Scrum, GTD.
So I'm curious, any stories that you have of people who were sophisticated project management people, and then they got GTD. You mentioned the one guy, but other stories where people say, wow, what GTD added was X, Y, or Z, or what I'm really glad I got GTD now because that does what to their current practices. Is there anything specific or even anecdotes that you have that people that would describe essentially why a company doing project management already should do GTD?
Yes, I think that the best example I have is one of our teacher, that is Marco. Marco is a teacher, but is also an experienced project manager, and he works with several companies as a project manager. And he started practicing GTD more or less 2 years ago, and now is very successful in companies doing project management. And he uses different tools for doing natural planning model together with his customers in order to make them understand what they are really doing. So he uses panels, boards, and they basically do planning together. And I think we have some examples. We presented also in several project management forums what he is doing, because the key really is reflect with the people and visualize what the people is thinking, is brainstorming, is coming up with all the sort of detailed ideas, and then start with practical next actions.
So basically externalizing, building project external brain and doing that. That's very cool. I'm curious, Agile and Scrum and so forth are usually tied to or usually associated with IT projects. But I've come across some people that are saying that we're now trying to approach all of our projects, not just IT projects, from a more Agile point of view. What's your experience with that? Are you seeing the newer models actually being used outside of the IT world?
Yes, it's starting to be applied outside of the IT world. For example, in marketing or fast prototyping and creating new examples of products with only small steps or only small increments after the previous version. So that is true. These come up from the IT world, but I think that it should be applied every time we are producing knowledge and not physical objects. And this is becoming more and more common, that our product is more knowledge than physical object. So do
you have an example? Can you give me an example of that? Would that be like a way to come up with a strategy, or a way to come up with what's a knowledge outcome as opposed to physical product?
Well, the first example that come to my mind is that of a physical object, really. And we had the development of an agile development of product from the home, product that is meant to be used in a home, like a perfumer or something that is used to have a good perfume in your home. We had as a team an idea. Then someone in the team quickly build a physical object resembling the final object. I mean, we can also give the people participating to a meeting an idea of we are producing, doing a small model in clay or whatever. So the first example of my life as a consultant that is that of physical object. But I am wondering, for example, if I can also write a book, building it first, some small part of the book, or only I can write a whole book starting with a small article or building together ideas that I put in different moments. I can build together something that not started to be a final book, but can start working on some specific ideas. Or I can build a marketing campaign, building together, trying different ideas in agile way, then change, try another, and whatever. I don't know if I really
No, that's a good example. Or designing a training program, for instance.
Yeah, that's it.
Same sort of thing. There's no physical product, but there's a cognitive product or an intellectual product, an experiential product. Interesting. What advice would you give people who are not necessarily in the project management world that you've learned from project managers? What do they do well in the rest of their lives? That maybe some of the newer versions of project management have helped. How have they helped you? How have they helped anybody you know sort of manage the business of their life, not just a project?
Oh, yes. What I learned, I'm a little bit influenced by GTD, I have to say, but what I have learned is to have a clear vision. And I have learned that a clear vision is not necessarily something that will become true. It's only handy illusion, as you said, but nevertheless is important to align the behaviors in the present. So the first is to have a clear vision. The second lesson is take your time for reflecting. Thinking. It's amazing how often we didn't think. We only act without thinking. Visualize, try to externalize. I think that those are basic lessons coming from the project management. Maybe the old project management was too structured. We are living out now structure, but we always have a vision. We always have what we call planning. Planning basically is thinking about the future, is thinking about all things that could be relevant for our purpose, and externalizing and visualizing and thinking again.
Well, I have to say too, Luca, come on, you live in one of our favorite places in the world, especially for food, for clothes, for shoes, for cars, for architecture, for whatever. I mean, you live in design heaven, or at least a country that's known very much for that. I'm curious how much uptake there's been for the newer planning models. Is that how a lot of the great design has happened? Or is there something that even your country and its fabulous designers and product makers are learning now, given what you're doing?
No, I was thinking I worked 2 years for one of the greatest fashion designers. And I have to admit that also they are very structured. So possibly we in Italy, my perception is that we should learn to think, we should learn to plan, we should think to have a vision. So maybe for the GTDQ model could help us, but could be we are a reactive country sometimes, and we are visionary crazy makers sometimes. And we should learn to have more perspective, maybe.
I'm curious because Catherine and I were always sort of scratching our heads saying, gee, I don't know that if we could ever find anybody in Italy to manage GTD because the Italians don't seem to be, they seem to either already have figured it out or they're not interested in figuring it out. And even many of the Italians, as you know, when I've done some speeches there, they say, yeah, we're kind of a manana culture. We probably need this. You're a Southern Mediterranean culture. And of course, it's wonderful to have a person with the reputation you have. And I've seen your reputation, in your country is quite wonderful from your experience and your project management work and the training that you guys do. So delighted to have you there as a representative of GTD and giving it some more credibility, perhaps, than the Italians would want. So I'm curious, just your experience with the culture.
Oh, sure. Well, as I said to you other times, Italy, there is, in my opinion, there is not yet a thing that we can call really Italy. We have many Italies.
Right.
So, for example, we have absolutely passionate people about GTD in Florence, in Milan, in Bologna. Northern Italy is becoming passionate to GTD. I find people who read all the book, who is very happy to find the official training here in Italy. But I still have no signals from Southern Italy. But this is very complex. Consider also that the vast majority of our gross product comes from Northern Italy. So it's difficult for me to talk about Italy in general terms.
Right. It's actually a much younger country than I realized.
Yeah.
In terms of putting it all together and everybody seeing themselves as Italians. That's, we think because of all the history of Rome and all the ancient history that's so embedded there that the whole country was a whole country before that, but that's not the case.
No, that is not the case. So it was very easy for us to find people who is already passionate about GTD, people who is passionate about project management. By the way, the ancient Roman you mentioned were project managers.
They got things done, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more difficult going south, but we are working on that.
Yay, great. And your own personal journey, Luca, with GTD, how did you come across me or this methodology? What happened?
Yes, it happened that I started my company and I found myself too much busy. I found myself not being able to put together my personal life and my work. I found myself not reaching my goals and objectives. And so I went across your book, David. I read your book. I tried to put it into practice. I started my journey. And then at the end of the book, I found written somewhere, if you want to come in contact with us, please do so. And I did so. And that's it. It's all started. I discovered that you had no representative in Italy, and I asked to be the representative. This happened. And I think that I learned from GTD is to keep track of my achievements. I too often forget I had an achievement. I move forward for the next one, but I usually didn't take the time to savor, to celebrate the achievement I had. And this is...
Yeah, we could all do more of that. No kidding. Well, Luca, this has been fun. Any last messages you'd like to give people who are listening to this, maybe especially for people who may be just beginning their GTD journey? Oftentimes it's kind of nice to give them a little bit of a coaching. So any Luca Gambetti, our Italian master trainer and franchisee, any final words you'd like to leave with someone out there who maybe just has run across GTD?
Yes, I definitely would like to say to my colleagues and friends and all the people who participate in our training that yes, it is possible to live a more relaxed, focused life. I am experiencing that, and I'm trying to be a GTD practitioner, and I found benefits for myself. And I think that we all can live less stressed life.
Yay. Great stuff. Hey, Luca, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, if they have any questions or anything they would like to communicate with you directly, can they do that? And if so, how could they do that?
Yes, they can contact us on our website, that is www.imlearning.it, or they can contact me directly at my email address, that is luca.gambetti@equality-italia.it. Okay, we have also a Facebook account that is easy to reach, but it is GTD Italia, so it's quite easy to reach.
Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, Luca. Thank you for the great work you're doing there, for being who you are, and for sharing this with us.
Thank you, David.
Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao. Have a good day.